Back when I was 17, in my last year of high school, life was finally starting to get interesting, or at least it felt that way. I just started hitting it off with a girl I crushed on forever. I'll call her Marla. She was this artsy, wild type, always with paint on her jeans or incense in her backpack. Pot was her thing back then, not mine, but I did make a big deal out of it. I guess I was just too into her to care. Marla lived a few blocks from me, right across the street from this neighborhood park. It wasn't much during the day. Some slides, monkey bars, wood chips everywhere, but at night, it turned into our hangout spot. She'd ping me on AOL Messenger. Yeah, those were the days, and I'd sneak out. We'd sit on the swings, trade secrets, sometimes pass a joint, though I usually just held it for show. The park was always dead quiet at night, wrapped in thick trees that formed a kind of natural wall. You couldn't see out, and no one could see in. That made it feel private, safe. Too safe, maybe. One night, sometime past midnight, Marla messaged me with the usual, "Come out." I grabbed my flashlight and walked the familiar 2 blocks. She was waiting on the second platform of the playground, legs dangling, grinning like a kid. After a while of talking and laughing, she got this glint in her eye and playfully punched my shoulder. "Let's play hide and seek," she said. I laughed. "Seriously?" She nodded. "Come on. 1 round. You're it." What can I say? We were seniors in high school, acting like kids, but in that moment, it felt kind of perfect. She told me to count by the trees. 30 seconds, she called out, already taking off toward the shadows. I turned around and started counting. When I reached 30, I figured she'd go for the obvious spot, the playground. She always had this way of being predictable and unpredictable at the same time. I crossed the lawn, my flashlight beam shaky in the dark. Back then, phones didn't have lights, so we always carried cheap plastic flashlights with fading batteries. Mine flickered as I stepped onto the mulch. I didn't want to climb all over the equipment if I didn't have to, so I scanned from below. You know those weird plastic walls at the top of some playgrounds? The ones with all the little holes, like oversized cheese graters. There was one up there, and I spotted a flash of pale skin through the holes. An eye peeking out. A jacket sleeve. Marla. I smirked. Instead of going up, I decided to mess with her a bit. I swung the light lazily around, pretending I hadn't seen her, then walked toward the picnic area. Once I got far enough, I turned off the flashlight and doubled back, stepping lightly through the mulch. I never got the chance to reach her. Out of nowhere, something yanked my arm hard. I actually screamed. It was that sudden. But before I could fully panic, I heard Marla's laughter right in my ear. "It's just me," she giggled, still holding onto my arm. "Gotcha." I turned the flashlight back on, trying to slow my heart down. It really was her, but my confusion kicked in right after. "Wait," I said. "I saw you up there." She looked blank. "Up where?" I pointed up to the top platform. "Behind the plastic thing. I saw your eye." Marla shook her head slowly. "I wasn't up there. I was hiding behind the slide." My stomach twisted a little. I swear I saw someone. Creak. We both froze. That sound, that faint creaking of shifting plastic or wood, suddenly had a different weight to it. We looked up, slowly, and that's when I raised the flashlight again. A hunched shape was leaning over the railing on the top platform, just above where we stood. Not moving, just there. Then we heard it, footsteps behind us, crunching over the mulch. Someone else was down there with us. I grabbed Marla's hand and we ran. I killed the flashlight so they wouldn't follow the beam, and we sprinted across the street straight into her house. We slammed her bedroom door, yanked the curtains shut, and collapsed onto the floor in silence, catching our breath. We didn't talk about it right away. We just sat there, shaken. Eventually, we tried to convince ourselves it had been a prank. Maybe another kid in the neighborhood. Maybe. But deep down, we both knew better. That was the last time we ever went to the park at night. Some memories burrow into your brain like splinters, too sharp to forget, too painful to dig out. This one's mine. I was 6 years old, all freckles and cowlicks, with more energy than common sense. Every Saturday, my mom would take me to this massive playground on the edge of town. And when I say massive, I mean it looked like a fortress. Walls of wood, towers with rope bridges, slides twisting like snakes. To a 6-year-old, it was a kingdom. To a predator, it was a buffet. That day was like any other. The sun was out, the air smelled like bark and hot plastic, and the playground was buzzing with what must have been 50 kids. My mom found a spot in the shade with the other parents, where they lounged on benches reading magazines or chatting. I didn't notice any of them. I was busy being a knight or a spy or something that involved a lot of running. I was darting across one of the upper platforms when someone called out to me. "Hey there, sweetie." It was a woman I didn't recognize, probably in her late 50s, wearing a beige windbreaker and glasses that caught the sun. She crouched a little so we were eye level. Her smile was tight but wide, the kind adults use when they're trying to win your trust. "You're just the cutest," she said. "That blonde hair. You look just like your mom." She talked like she knew me, her voice sugary and familiar. I didn't answer. I didn't really know how to. Then she said something that made my stomach flip. "Your mom had to run home real quick, but she asked me to take you back." Now at 6, I was still figuring out how the world worked. I didn't fully grasp that strangers weren't supposed to be trusted, but I hesitated. Something didn't feel right. Still, she held out her hand and gave me that same warm smile, so I followed her. We walked past the jungle gyms, past the shaded benches where none of the parents seemed to notice. She led me toward the parking lot, where an old station wagon waited, beige to match her coat. A man sat in the driver's seat, thick beard, thick eyebrows, watching us through the windshield. When I got close, he turned his head and said something sharp to the woman. I didn't understand it at all, but I caught the anger in his tone. He wasn't smiling. She brushed it off and opened the back door for me. "Hop in, honey." And I did. The man pulled out fast. Too fast. I bounced in the seat, no seatbelt on. That's when it really hit me. This wasn't normal. My mom never left without saying goodbye. She never let anyone else pick me up. I looked at the woman beside me and felt a wave of cold fear settle in my chest. We stopped at a red light at the park's exit, and that's when a horn blared from behind us. I turned. It was my mom's car. I could see her face, wild with panic. She was yelling, but I couldn't hear through the glass. The man shouted something and stomped the gas, blowing through the red light. My stomach dropped as we sped down the street, swerving around other cars. I started crying, screaming. That's when the man snapped. He pulled the car to the side of the road, leaned over the seat, and roared, "Get out." The woman opened the door for me without looking at me. I scrambled out, nearly falling. My mom's car screeched to a stop beside me. She ran, scooped me up, and held me so tight I could hardly breathe. She kept asking if I was okay, but I couldn't answer. I was sobbing, trying to catch my breath and make sense of what had almost happened. In the chaos, she didn't think to get their license plate. There were no cell phones back then, no quick way to call the police. Just us, standing on the side of the road with my heart pounding against her chest. I wish I didn't remember that day so clearly. I wish it had faded like most childhood memories. But some things don't fade, they haunt. If you've made it this far, you're 100% a horror fanatic and we approve. If you love our campfire-themed horror storytelling experience, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on our daily uploads. I was 13 when it happened, old enough to pretend I wasn't scared of the dark, but still young enough to be utterly paralyzed by it. My bedroom window faced the playground behind our apartment complex. Most nights, it was just part of the background, an empty space filled with old equipment and overgrown weeds. But that night, something about it felt different. It was late spring, one of those humid nights after a light rain, the kind where everything smells like wet grass and the air is just heavy enough to stick to your skin. I had my window cracked open to let in a breeze, the soft patter of leftover raindrops dripping from the leaves lulling me towards sleep. Then I heard it, a faint squeaking. At first, I thought it was a tree branch swaying in the wind, but it didn't stop. It repeated, slow and rhythmic, almost mechanical. Creak, pause, creak. It started to get under my skin. I sat up in bed and walked quietly to the window. I peered out into the darkness, squinting to see past the dim light of the distant street lamp. That's when I saw him. A man sitting on the swing set. He wasn't moving his legs. The swing was in motion, but he just sat there rigid, letting the momentum carry him slightly back and forth. And he was staring straight at my window. I froze. He was too far away for me to see clearly, just a vague shape in the dark, but I could feel his gaze, heavy and direct, cutting through the distance between us. I ducked below the window ledge and crouched, heart racing. Did he see me? Was he just looking at the building, or did he know I was watching? I sat there for what felt like forever. I didn't want to wake my parents. I didn't want to cross the hallway in the dark. I just wanted the squeaking to stop. I wanted the night to go back to what it was. Eventually, it did. The sound faded. I waited a few seconds longer, then crept back to the window, just enough to peek over the edge. The swing was empty, but the man was no longer at the swing because he was now standing, no more than 10 feet from my window. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. The light from the window caught his face just enough. It was pale, sunken, lips drawn too tight. But it was the eyes that I remember most, wide, staring directly into mine, like he'd been waiting for me to look again. Only for a second or two. But those seconds have never left me. I finally broke from the trance and ran, yelling for my dad. By the time he looked out the window, the man was gone. He grabbed a flashlight and ran outside, barefoot, still in his t-shirt. He came back 10 minutes later, empty-handed. "There's nothing out there," he said, "but there are boot prints in the mud under the swing." That was enough to make my mom insist on moving my room to the other side of the apartment the next day. We didn't call the police. We didn't know what to tell them. And deep down, I think none of us wanted to explain what had really happened, because no one would believe us. That was years ago, but even now, when I hear the creak of metal or the soft swing of chains, my skin goes cold. I still dream about that face. And sometimes, when the nights are particularly still, I swear I hear the squeaking again. Being a single parent isn't easy, but it's the quiet nights that really get to you. The ones where the world seems still, almost too still. That's when you notice things, sounds that shouldn't be there, shapes that don't quite belong. I live with my 5-year-old son, Elwin, in a modest house that backs onto a patch of woods. Our backyard is deep, and tucked into one corner is an old wooden playground I built when we moved in. It's simple, just a slide, monkey bars, and a tire swing hanging from a beam, but Alan loves it. A week ago, I woke in the middle of the night to a faint squeaking sound. At first, I thought it was part of a dream, but it kept going, a slow, rhythmic creak. I recognized it immediately, the tire swing. It has this distinct, rusty groan when it turns. Still half asleep, I figured Alan had snuck outside somehow. I got up, made my way to his room, and found him curled up in bed, fast asleep. That was the moment my stomach dropped. I stood there staring at him, my heart slowly starting to race. Someone or something was in our yard. I went downstairs and opened the back door cautiously. The night air hit me, damp and cold. Crickets chirped. The swing was moving, not just swaying from the breeze, spinning. I stepped outside, flashlight in hand, sweeping it across the yard. Nothing. No footsteps in the grass, no signs of anyone. Just the slow rotation of the swing and the memory of soft laughter that I could have sworn I'd heard. I told myself it was probably just some neighborhood kid sneaking in, looking for a thrill. I made sure the back gate was locked and went back to bed. But 2 nights later, it happened again. This time, I heard footsteps, the rhythmic clunk of someone climbing up the slide and then stomping down it. And laughter, a child's laughter, but not Owen's. It was high-pitched, almost giggly, but wrong. Too loud, too close. I rushed to Owen's room, still asleep. This time, instead of heading outside right away, I went to the window and peeked through the blinds. I expected to see nothing. But the playground was there in the moonlight, and the slide was wet from dew. No one was visible, yet I could hear the faint sound of movement, plastic groaning under weight, like someone was there, but just out of sight. I finally stepped outside, flashlight on, scanning every shadow. Nothing. Again. I convinced myself it was just my imagination. Maybe a mix of stress and fatherhood insomnia. Maybe I was hearing things. That illusion shattered 2 nights later. It was around 3 a.m. I was lying in bed when there was a knock at the window. 3 slow, deliberate taps. I froze. Every muscle in my body tensed. I didn't want to move, didn't want to see. But I forced myself to stand, heart pounding like a drum beat, and went to the window. Outside, through the foggy glass, I could barely make out the silhouette of the playground. Both swings on the swing set were moving. Gently. And over the wind, I could hear it again, that laugh. But this time, I wasn't alone in hearing it. Owen woke up crying down the hall. I bolted out of my room, into his, picked him up, and held him tightly. When I looked outside again, that's when I saw it. There was a figure, tall, far too tall to be a child, standing at the top of the playground. It wasn't moving, just watching, looming. I couldn't make out its face, but I didn't need to. Everything about it was wrong. The way it stood too still, the way the shadows didn't seem to cling to it like they should. It was like it didn't belong in this world. I backed away from the window, locked every door in the house, and called 911. The wait for the cops was the longest 20 minutes of my life. Owen clung to me, burying his face into my chest, whimpering. I could feel his little heartbeat racing, mirroring mine. By the time the officers arrived, the figure was gone. The swing had stopped. No footprints, no signs of a break-in. They took my statement, chalked it up to a trespasser or maybe even a dream. But I know what I saw. And last night, another knock at the window. I didn't look. I stayed in bed, clutching Owen like a shield, staring at the ceiling, counting the seconds until dawn. I'm getting cameras installed this week. Motion lights, whatever it takes. But deep down, I'm starting to wonder if any of that will matter.